Good morning. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. We have as our guest today the new head of EPD, Judd Turner, and he will be addressing us. And I guess go ahead and come up and be seated. Do you need Mr. Ushery with you as well? That's fine. It's fine. Sure. And do you need your wingman? Yeah. Okay. All right. And Representative Chuck Williams will open us with the prayer. What's your number, Mike? 27. Okay.
Thank you. If you would, let's pause for a moment of prayer. Our kind and gracious God in heaven, Lord, as we gather here to do the business of the people of the state of Georgia, Lord, we just ask that you give us wisdom and guidance so that everything that is said and everything that is done will be pleasing to you and in furtherance of your kingdom. Lord, as we gather here to talk about the natural resources that you have entrusted us with as stewards, Lord, we just ask that you give us the tools we need so that we can leave this earth and these resources better than we found them, because we know, Lord, that we are only temporary stewards. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Good morning to you. Several of our committee members have other meetings starting at 8:30, or some are going on right now, but we want to be here for your presentation. But if you see members coming and going, that's the explanation for that. And since we are pressed for time, we'll go ahead and let our new EPD director begin his presentation. Thank you. And then we'll do questions afterwards.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. It's good to be with you this morning. I think everybody, we did the old-fashioned way of just sort of printing out the PowerPoint, and hopefully have that. We'll just walk through. There's going to be more words on the PowerPoint. Feel free to do so. Um, just at the beginning here, we just start with the mission statement, which we obviously have an important role in protecting and restoring Georgia's environment, and that includes our air, water, and land resources. But I really like the last sentence there that is part of the balance that we are about in our mission, which is to pursue a sustainable environment that provides a foundation for a vibrant economy and healthy communities. And I don't think we can. Sometimes we view growth and economic sustainability as in competition with environmental sustainability, and that's not how I view the world. I think if we have a healthy economy, we have more resources with which to protect our environment. And obviously, that doesn't mean we don't have a regulatory role that in some cases is uncomfortable for folks that are trying to grow in a unhealthy way. But for those that are trying to comply with our varied laws and protect the environment, we want to be a partner in that and help that occur, so that it's not a zero-sum game with our goals from an economic and an environmental standpoint. With technology and all the advancements we are experiencing in this area, we have options on the table every day that we didn't have before. So it's not a zero-sum game, and our best days are ahead. If you turn and just look at the different list of environmental laws administered by EPD, a lot of these are state laws, many of which are. We also have a lot of rules and delegated authority that we pass that are federally mandated, and that's an important point for me to always sort of beat the drum on. Sometimes folks get frustrated with what the state has had to do from a regulatory standpoint, and some of those regulations are sometimes we're, as some folks might argue, more strenuous than federal law, but most of the time, particularly lately, we have to implement rules and regs because certain federal mandates. And what's important to remember is we have this delegated authority, which, as most of you know, means that we're the agency actually issuing permits, and we're the ones that you come to at the local level initially. And we could, folks in the past have suggested that we send some of these roles and responsibilities back to the feds if we didn't like having to do certain things, but most folks don't want to have to go to EPA for their permit. So it's a balance. We have to live in that balance. We hope we're doing as good a job as we can, but we want to communicate and communicate well, not only with the folks in the General Assembly, but the people of Georgia about why we're doing what we're doing from a regulatory standpoint. And I know the Speaker and the Governor have both said, all the way down to the competitiveness initiative, that we need to look at the body of regulation in the state and make sure it's all necessary. And we're in the middle of a review in that regard as well. But you can see the list of statutory mandates that we are charged with administering. I think what we'll do this morning is just sort of walk through. Really, EPD is broken into three large branches: the air branch, the water, the land branch, and the watershed or water branch. And we also have district offices. So that's really, we'll talk about those four buckets as we go. Just starting with the air branch, we have the responsibility to issue construction or operating permits for those stationary source emitters, and this is obviously a place where we see a great impact to economic development. And as we'll talk about down here below, we're involved in this whole non-attainment discussion, and we have set certain ambient air quality standards that are established by federal law, and EPA has been ratcheting those standards down, and our air quality in the state and in the Atlanta region is a very good success story. If you start in looking at our air quality and whether it's the particulate matter or ozone or other regulated constituents in the air, it's an incredible success story about the cleanliness of our air. And the 97 standard, I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but I'll try to come back. The 97 standard, we are basically in attainment on both ozone and particulate matter, and are in the process of having that declared by the federal government. The problem is we've got a new standard for ozone, the 08 standard, which is more strenuous, 75 parts per billion, and we're in a negotiation that'll be finalized by the end of May with EPA about how many of our metro area counties are in non-attainment. We said it should be 4, where we had air quality monitors, and those monitors showed we were not within this 08 standard. The EPA came back with 18, and we're in the middle of that sort of negotiation about how many of those counties are going to be in non-attainment. That's obviously a very important question. Our economic development competitors in other states like to point to that often, and saying if you're trying to move your plant or facility to Georgia, you're going to have trouble getting an air permit if the county you're targeting is in non-attainment. So that's very important. Let me jump down, and we'll come back to that whole attainment discussion, but we're also involved in our mobile air and area sources. So your vehicle emissions testing, we call it I&M. These emissions tests on our cars in the metro area, and we've also implemented certain grant programs to retrofit heavy-duty diesel vehicles, buses, and we've retrofit some train engines, and we have, as part of the planning and the regulatory development involved in the whole permitting process, that these are some of your most complicated permits in the airspace, where you get most of this pretty technical modeling work that has to be done, and our folks are heavily involved there. I've talked a little bit about the ambient monitoring. We do that as part of sort of the daily pollution forecast for Atlanta, Macon, and Columbus, and we're measuring those pollutant levels in the outside air. The state climatologist is now part of EPD by executive order from Governor Deal. We also have some sort of legal issues related to air, particularly what's known as the cross-state air pollution rule, which we among many states are challenging, and we provide a lot of technical assistance to the Attorney General's office on that. But if you turn over to the slide entitled Ambient Monitoring Stations, you can see where those are, and then you can see our existing non-attainment areas, counties, and whether it's ozone and particulate matter or just the particulate matter counties on the sheet here. And as I mentioned, we are it's just a matter of sort of administrative process of getting declared back in attainment for the 97 standards statewide. And so now we're in the middle of this discussion of this new stricter 08 standard and how long that how many counties that will be. Madam Chair, if it works, I'll stop now at the air branch and let anybody that wants to ask questions or comment do so. That slide wasn't there? Okay, sure. Sure. You want me to do that first, or would you like to?
Go ahead, and
Okay.
then I'm going to be noting who has questions. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Yes, I am. I come to this job in probably a different route than I certainly didn't plan it. When I was with Governor Perdue, I know many of you from my days with Governor Perdue as executive counsel to Perdue, and I was there during our worst drought of record, 06 to 08, and during that period of time, we had a lot of litigation, and we still do, related to what we call the Tri-State Water Wars, the ACF Basin, which is the Apalachicola, Chattahoochee, Flint Basin, and also the Alabama, Coosa, Tallapoosa Basin, which, those federal reservoirs in the northwest part of the state, Carter's and Allatoona, are the key federal reservoirs involved in that, and of course Lake Lanier and our Chattahoochee arm federal basins, West Point and Walter F. George and Seminole are sort of involved in that ACF discussion. But we ended up in a pretty intense effort trying to get the Corps to institute a drought operation so we didn't drain Lanier. Everybody probably remembers that. We made great press all over the country as Governor Perdue stood on the banks of Lake Lanier and basically told the president we had a reverse Katrina going on. So it was an intense time, and we were all. I became sort of the person within the governor's office working with the EPD director and others, but the governor's main representative in negotiations with our sistering states of Alabama and Florida related to these issues, but also the federal government and all those agencies as we negotiated how to get through that period of time. Ultimately, Georgia, managed its way through that pretty well. We got a drought operation instituted that was much better. We had what we call the interim operating procedure, the way they operated the reservoirs. We knew it was going to drain the reservoirs with a multi-year drought, and it did. And so we got them to pull back from that. put in place sort of a drought operation for when the reservoirs get low, and we've been under that since. When I left, in about 2 years left in Purdue's administration, had young ones, and were trying to replenish the bank account, and we started a small law practice and a public affairs firm that was multidisciplinary with folks that you guys probably know, and that firm was named Georgia 360, and we did that for about 4 years, but I stayed on as special executive counsel to Governor Perdue and then to Governor Deal on water issues. So I've been working with Governor Deal now for a little over a year, and when Alan Barnes announced his plans to move back to the private sector, the governor asked if I would come step into this role at EPD. Obviously, I come to this role with more experience on the water side than I do on the air or land side, but I'm humbled to get asked to do it and excited to be in the seat. But that's kind of how I got here.
Thank you very much, and welcome aboard. And hold on. Number 17, if you will introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. Question is very simple. I'm sorry, Harry Geisinger. I represent Roswell, Sandy Springs. The non-attainment area on this map is basically Metro Atlanta. Isn't that primarily not industry, but automobiles?
I think that has a lot to do with it. I know what we have been able to control and improve has been a combination of what we've been doing with the good story on automobiles. It's amazing the technology I understand they're able to do, which is Jack Cap, our air branch guy, was telling me this the other day, that we literally have the technology to, at an on-ramp, shoot the muffler of a car and monitor that how we're, what that body of cars are doing in the metro area versus outside. And just as we have improved fuel efficiency in new automobiles, and as automobiles turn over, this has improved our air quality in the metro area. So we're in the middle of assessing, frankly, the mobile emissions whole system and how much bang we're getting for that. We're not ready to say it's not worth the effort, because I think it still is, but it's clearly, from a marginal benefit standpoint, all the cars are cleaning up and it's getting better. But Jim, I know on particulate matter, and we still have our coal-fired power plants that have an impact there, but that's a very good story too. I mean, those guys are cleaning up, as you know, and putting these scrubbers on and working, and are working with us on a schedule of doing that. So we're getting better and better. It's just a matter of, we get pinched when the feds say, okay, now it's time for a new level, and here's your timeline to do it, and as opposed to giving us more time. But I think it's certainly the mobile sources are a big part of what we're dealing with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 27.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Chuck Williams from Oconee County. Over the last decade or so, our friends at the EPA have been phasing in diesel regulations, particularly on particulate matter, early on with on-road diesel, and more recently a couple of new tiers with off-road, and that has come at considerable expense to the trucking sectors, and then off-road ag, forestry, construction. Do we have any evidence yet here in Georgia that is really playing a significant role in reducing diesel emissions and particulates?
It's a great question, and I know that one of the things, and I'll let Jim help me answer that question specifically as it relates to diesel, but I do know that, for instance, on these volatile organic compounds that we've had to we're in attainment without regulating those, because in Georgia we don't think that has any impact on on our air quality, not enough to actually help us get to attainment. So what we had to do with these volatile organic compounds is we had to pass We just passed some rules in the DNR board last month that basically say, we'll, here they are, they're on the books, but we're already in attainment without having done anything with them. So they basically get passed, and then we get held to be in attainment for the 97 standard, and then these volatile organic compounds are kind of put to the side as a corrective measure if we fell out of attainment for the 97 standard. So it's certainly true that in certain cases EPA wants us to get on something that, as it relates to Georgia, may not really be a big contributor. But I don't know the answer on diesel. Jim, do you have any specific?
It's not been identified as a significant contributor in the Atlanta area on the diesel. So that's not the focus of our state implementation plans. As you mentioned, it is a focus for EPA.
Thank you. Number 23.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering if only 4 of the 9 Atlanta area monitors are above the 2008 standards. Why is there a differential between what we believe the county should be and what EPD?
Great question. Let me just be accurate. That's the only 4 places we have monitors in the metro. So it's not as though the other county next door has a monitor that's in compliance. So we just started by saying, okay, we know these 4 are out of compliance because this is where our monitors are. And, they came back with a net we think too broad. So hopefully this is a negotiation we're going to meet in the middle somewhere.
Thank you. Number 12.
From Atlanta. And I'm delighted to see that we're getting back into a state of attainment. Is there any data that shows impact on asthma?
I don't know the asthma.
Is that
data.
a health department issue, maybe?
No, there's national data on that, but we don't have any region-specific data correlating those two. They're certainly related, but it's not quite as good.
You think the health department might? Maybe.
I don't know if they've done any type of study based on air quality results. It's, asthma, of course, is related to a lot of other things as well. So.
It's always good to show positive results if you can.
You can certainly see a rise in the number of folks going to the doctors or hospitals for asthma-related things when you have really bad air days. Fortunately, for many of them, not quite used to it. It may be.
Thank you. Number 11.
Carol Fullerton from Albany. We're very glad to have you here, Mr. Turner. I might add that Mr. Turner grew up in Albany, in Doherty County, down the alley from my children growing up.
Down the street.
So he knows what clean air and water and land is all about. And we're glad to have him there and want to be able to work successfully with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 8.
I'm State Representative Ralph Long from Atlanta, Mr. Turner, and I want to say thank you for being here. With the EPD working on redesignating areas back to attainment, are there any new guidelines for the carcinogenic substance pentachlorophenol, which is a telephone wood pole preservative, a wood preservative, or anything? I have a pole plant in my district that I've been, a lot of my colleagues here on this committee know that I've aggressively sought to regulate a little bit because of their lax regulation. We've had some class action lawsuits with surrounding communities in the city of East Point, and we'd really like to. Well, it's not. Okay.
Can you move the mic back and forth? Thank you.
We'll answer that. As far as attainment goes, that's not a constituent that's part of the regulated process as it relates to attainment. Obviously, that as you mentioned, there are certain discussions and legal action related to that constituent as it relates to include, but that's not what we're a criteria for attainment.
Oh, it looks like I'm at the wrong ballpark. Huh?
It is, of course, regulated in the hazardous waste rules, which you may know.
What, could you speak up just a little bit more?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Pentachlorophenol is regulated pretty heavily in the hazardous waste realm, but it's not a criteria pollutant for air protection.
Define pretty heavily for me.
Well, it's regulated. I guess it's very tightly regulated from cradle to grave. There's certainly restrictions. Now, I think what you're talking about is what's been released to the ground and what's being cleaned up. Is that? Are you talking about the actual treatment?
We can smell it too as well. I mean, down there in that area. I mean, it's that particular company, Meredith, has had some violations with the EPD with the contaminating the water table, I believe, twice over some time. But I think most of my constituents in the community at Jefferson Park are concerned with the fact that they can smell it, and they have to put forth disclaimers to real estate brokers when they're selling their houses and conveying property. So if there are any new regulations or any new kind of, things dealing with pentachlorophenol, I would just appreciate knowing about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the questions for this particular bucket. So if you'll move on to the next one. Thank you.
We'll move to the land bucket. There are a lot of things that fall under the land branch, and fairly recently, and I don't know if this was under Alan Barnes' tenure or slightly before, but I know we've recently combined what was the hazardous waste branch with the land branch to have a large land protection branch. But on the hazardous waste side, you'll see on the prevention side, as we're sort of breaking it up on this slide and talking about, we inspect the generators of hazardous waste, and we permit the treatment and disposal of hazardous waste. And then on the restoration side, we're involved with the overseeing of the cleanup of industrial sites, what we call the hazardous site inventory, and what is a program that has received some positive attention, I think, and is because you can drive by and see the results. The brownfields redevelopment is also what we're able to do at some of these sites. Underground storage tanks are another big piece of the land branch. Is operation on the prevention side. We're involved training operators and inspecting every 3 years and developing those standards for tank installation. On the cleanup side, we oversee the cleanup of by these tank owners of these leaking underground storage tanks. And of course, there's a trust fund associated with that we administer to finance those cleanups. Solid waste is a sort of separate category from hazardous waste, and this is where we are involved a lot in our regulation of our landfill operators and training them and issuing permits for the collection and disposal of solid waste, and the inspection of construction and operation of those landfills. There are cleanups related to landfills, and corrective action for contaminated groundwater is a big deal where we have issues related to landfills, and in some cases those landfills are closed, and we're still involved in the monitoring and maintenance of those for years. Also within the land branch is our surface mining program. So we permit the mining site, we permit the mining sites, and make sure we've got the protective buffers and inspect the daily operations. We're also involved in the reclamation efforts after on the reclamation side for a site that's been in use. And we have to approve those plans and ensure the funds for those reclamations. And then something that does get some attention for good reason, based on the tire fee. We deal with the scrap tires out there, and we have of course the two trust funds that are involved in both what we've been talking about, the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund, funded largely by those tipping fees, and then the Solid Waste Trust Fund, funded by the tire fee. But we permit the carriers and the processors for for scrap tires, and we inspect the tire retailers. And then we are often called to answer complaints related to illegal tire dumps. They are a hazardous, they are a bad environmental concern. They can catch fire, and then we have back to our air conversation before they're from a health and safety standpoint, they're not ideal because of they catch water and mosquitoes and all those sorts of things. So we're involved in using some of those funds from the Solid Waste Trust Fund to help clean up those abandoned tire sites. And then also, and I know this is a topic close to Madam Chair's heart, the lead-based paint abatement and the asbestos abatement programs. We certify the trainers and the workers and try to educate folks about what the requirements are on the front end, and then we investigate complaints related to unsafe work practices, and and this does impact when we have the restoration of older homes, and it can be something that I know is a challenge in communities like where I'm from, Griffin and Noonan and other places where we got a lot of older homes that if we make it, it's a challenge because if we make it too hard to paint your house again, that's not a good thing either. So we're trying to do as best we can within the flexibility of what are some federal mandates in this area.
Director, could I ask you to go ahead and mention the water aspect of your division?
Sure.
And then your other, your district operations, because we convened today at 9 o'clock, so
Sure.
I'll be adjourning our meeting close to 10 till 9.
Sure.
And I want to give everybody a chance to get your questions, so I'm logging your numbers as you press, and we'll go from there. But thank
Okay.
you.
Yes, in the water area, and this is, you can see here the number of permits on the water withdrawal side. We got a lot of ag permits, and then we have 800 non-farm permits on water withdrawal. We regulate and make sure that the drinking water systems above a certain size are permitted, and we've got 2,500 of those. We permit our wastewater and stormwater systems out there. You can see we have erosion and sediment control permits in around 6,000, stream buffer variances, and safe dams. This used to be, we were having this conversation on the way over here. The safe dams are part of our water division, although they used to rest at DOT. So we inherit a few things that don't have obvious homes. We also are involved heavily in the status and condition assessment of our water resources, and this is monitoring and sort of figuring out how we're doing in our reservoirs, our streams, and our maintaining water quality. Part of water quality is about discharges and making sure those discharges are clean as they need to be, but quantity is a big issue that affects water quality as well, because if we don't have enough water flowing, it's hard to handle the fluent going back in the river. So we do a lot of monitoring related to streams, groundwater, and we manage that data. We do a lot of modeling out of the watershed division. And you can see in the next slide, when it comes to technical assistance, there's just I won't go through all those given our time, but you can see there are a lot of programs that we're involved in related to technical assistance in the water area. You good folks will know all about the water councils and their good work. For the past 3 years, they really were, I think, a success beyond what most folks could have dreamed. There will be more life and work for the councils. It's just a matter of us sitting down and talking about that. In one sense, we used a fair bit of federal money we had that we don't have anymore to fund a lot of the data that was necessary for these councils to work. We got we need some more data, and it varies by council, but that's all a kind of money issue. And so right now, we're in the middle of assessing that. I can tell you that on the one hand, we talked about the statewide water plan as this new thing and as a 3-year thing, but it needs to be part of what we do all the time and integrated into our daily practices. And as we look towards our water supply and securing our water resources for the future, regional planning, not just putting a reservoir right here that this municipality needs for 10 MGD. I mean, if within the next few years we're going to need 20 MGD out of that site, we need to bring everybody together and get that site constructed in the right way. So all the regional planning that's come from that and needs to continue is important. We just need to, sort of work within our budgetary constraints as we move forward. A lot of the great practices and best practices came out of those councils, and we're continuing to work on the education related to those. And then you'll see we mentioned sort of some of the they may not fit directly in. These are kind of, I guess, maybe more specific and high-profile issues related to water, but drought monitoring and response, which we've talked about already. Saltwater intrusion in the upper Florida on the coast is a real big issue, very contentious, has the potential to be very contentious with our neighbors in South Carolina. I think we've been working on that issue and understanding the causes related to it and working to avoid a tri-state or bi-state issue like we've had on the other side of the state. But that's something I spend a fair amount of time and worked on prior and will continue to. Savannah Harbor, the deepening is obviously a very important strategic objective for the state, for our port. Obviously, there's some environmental issues there that we help with. Lower Flint's a gem and also a resource that's with agriculture that's important. And this dry condition we're experiencing now is a challenge for us down there, but we're involved in a lot of that. Obviously, there's a lot of agency coordination that we do at our level with the feds and everybody else. So, last, I just say district operations. We've consolidated some districts, but this will give you a map of our districts. So we do have some bodies out from Atlanta, and these are the folks that typically get dispatched to do the inspections and to do the compliance and to deal with the complaints when whether it's some inert landfill that's not permitted or some discharge issue. So that we do have those operations. We've tried to consolidate some of them to be more efficient during this budget time, but I think they're important parts of the team, and you should know in your area where our district office is, and don't hesitate to let those guys work with you if you have something specific.
Thank you very much. And for one, I think our committee would like to know the contact people in their particular area. So if we could get that information. We have time for a couple of questions. I have a couple of buttons pressed, but I want to emphasize, I know that our director is available to all of us, to those here today and those listening. It's becoming very obvious from I think last week when we did DNR overview, and now we're doing the EPD overview, that this committee deals with very scientific and intense subject matter as well as geographical areas that we're from. And so I almost feel like we're getting a course overview every time we stop and look back into this. So I want to thank the committees for your interest as well. And we'll go ahead and take a couple of questions, and we will be delving a little bit this year into some of these buckets, so to speak. We have enough new members, and I think the rest of us could use a refresher. So thank you for that as well. Number 21.
Yes, that's me. Thank you.
Randy. Randy Nix.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
Okay.
I'm Representative Randy
You know
Nix,
who you are.
District 69. And I want to say that I appreciate what y'all do. I've gotten involved. Alan Barnes probably left a do not answer for me when I call. I'm one of those needy legislators who seem to always want to need something. But I've been involved in several different parts of the of the buckets from the land to the air. Well, I really hadn't been so involved in the air, but from the land and the water for various reasons. In fact, I got a call yesterday that says that we've got to regulate sound. We've got sound problems in LaGrange. They've moved a road and elevated a railroad, and apparently now the sound of the train is carrying. So I'm getting complaints about we're going to have to do something about the noise, and boy, that's great. But anyway, we're not going there right now. Specifically, I wanted to just mention the scrap tires, and I appreciate y'all working on that. I got involved with that last year through the bill I had that renewed the tire fee, and I think y'all know that Chairman Jay Powell has a bill that I'm supporting, and I think it has tremendous support to get that money to the right place to get some help to clean these up. And also, I know that Mark Smith has spoken with some of the people in the industry towards doing a little bit more permitting or watching over a little bit more carefully those people who are hauling the tires. If I understand it correctly, we have permitting for the people who are quote hauling the scrap tires, but if they call them used tires, somehow they get around that, and they'll take several hundred tires, and maybe there are two of them they're calling used. They'll reuse. They take those and then they dump the rest of them in the ditch. But I think that there's some rules that could be used on, maybe some permitting that could be used that might be something that would help on that issue. And I know Mark has spoken with him. I spoke with him about it, but it is a problem that just when you think you've got it beat down, it comes back. And I've gotten involved with that through some things. I know that y'all helped to clean up a pretty good size dump in Carroll County. I think Liberty Tire Recyclers helped, and there was a combined effort to move those. And I would encourage y'all to reach out to those industry people to get that help, because the other part of this is we're trying to get the DOT to use the recycled rubber in the asphalt, and that would create a tremendous demand. So if we can work with industry to try to do those things, I think we can attack that thing from multiple things, and that's what I committed to, is trying to figure out a way to solve that problem. So any help y'all can give, I would certainly appreciate it. And I appreciate what y'all do. Like I say, having been involved, I know that y'all, the things y'all deal with are huge, and people see them every day when they drive by that tire dump, and they don't mind calling. So, but thanks for the help, and anything you can do in that area, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sure.
I was going to say, that's one of the charges I think our committee is just going to be researching and looking into. But there's another component as well, and it's local enforcement, not just your agency, but there are enough laws on the book for egregious litter that can actually be enforced. In some of those instances, it can be a felony. So when your local policing agencies say they cannot be involved in this, they absolutely can, and I think we just need to look at all of this, is what I'm saying.
Very good, and I would just add, thank you for your work last year on the reauthorization of the Solid Waste Trust Fund. I think we were pushed as an agency to go out and make sure we had a good inventory list of these sites. We did. What had happened is when there wasn't any money for a while, people quit telling us about where they were. And so we got a new list. We're going to clean that list up. But now that we're back to clean up, the list is mushroomed again, which is good, because we now know where they are, and we're going to work at that'll form a better basis, frankly, for talking through the appropriations process about what the right appropriation is to clean up those needs. So they're out there. We just had, when we didn't have the money for a while, I think nobody was bothering to tell us about it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Number 12. Mr. Gardner.
Sorry, thank you very much. I wanted to talk a little about water. The chairman organized a wonderful meeting for us a few months ago, and we learned a little bit about the implications of both the Flint and Chattahoochee and how they work together. And I was concerned about the Regional Water Council seemed important in the planning process. And I'm concerned about the funding being available. We want you to do a lot of things. We just keep cutting your budget. I'm worried about that. And also, a couple of years ago, we gave a lot of money to metering. And I've been told that there's no money left for meters, and that the people on the Flint are no longer keeping very good track of how much water they use.
Well, I don't know about whether they aren't, there's a fall off in the metering. I do know that was a great thing that the agricultural community was willing to do, and this is a place where we work. I should say this, EPD doesn't make a lot of people have warm fuzzies, as I've said before, so we have some partners that help us with this. Our soil and water conservation guys have done a good job helping with that program particularly, and the agricultural department and some other areas. So we appreciate those partnerships. It is important, and we do need to sort of put a plan together. I guess where I am on the water councils as a whole is we used a lot of other resources that don't appear to be available anymore to fund that work. We had a state of appropriation of about $1 million, I think, but we had a bunch of federal money, and so I don't know how much. I don't know whether we had any of that. But we just had some reserve federal safe drinking water funds that were going away. So it's not like we funded it big and we just got to keep doing it. We got to kind of go back to the drawing board on what we need these councils to do, how they need to be formed, their cost, and what they need to do. But there's no doubt that it's important, and we want to do it. And we'll also look at the status of our ag permit, our ag monitors, because that's important. And that data actually showed that the usage was less than a lot of people thought, so that was a good thing. Yeah.
Let me thank you by way of concluding the meeting, and I know that y'all are going to be available to us as we have questions.
Absolutely.
And we've already been in conversation about some more in-depth studies of the issues we've raised today, and so we'll be getting back in touch with you. I want to thank you for your time. To my committee members, you've got 10 minutes to run and get ready to convene. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
While everyone's leaving, I want to thank Jeremy Ayers.